Welcome everyone. My name is Dr. Kirk Prine and we're excited to do a new set of workshops or kind of an expansion of workshops that we haven't done for a while, adding some new ingredients. And as teachers of erotic spirituality, of embodiment, health and wellness, especially for queer men, and men who love men, I've found over the years that gay queer men often have roles that we play in the larger society, and many of those have to do with healing, have to do with being bridge builders. So we're actually going to do a series of workshops about erotic spirituality and weaving that theme of erotic spirituality, the archetype of the sacred prostitute, with the notions of practicing dying. So being midwives to the dying. So what I can say is it's kind of like shedding a skin, and much of ecstasy is about kind of shedding the skin so that you can become more of that love, more of the embodiment of what it is that you're called to be in service to the world. And the archetype, the sacred prostitute that we talk about in our journey of ecstatic path that we do, is the archetype of the sacred prostitute is of course loaded and charged with imagery just from the words, but the sacred prostitutes of the past, or the witches, the sexual healers, the tantrikas, the sacred intimates, those of the past have always been healers who found the divine within them and exchanged that divine connection in union with others to bring about healing. So whether it was anointing someone, bringing herbs, and in this case, being with someone in their death process. So whether it's ancient ideas coming as far back as Egyptian mythology around the goddess Isis, who was a sexual healer, who clearly embodied the components of being a midwife to the dying, and the understanding of life, death, and rebirth that the Celtics also talk about. So traditions that we queer people have been a part of, which we've been a part of, we've been born into every culture and every tribe. Those things I think are alive and well in every cell of our bodies. And that consciousness, that remembering of the lineage from which we come and are here to be of service to the world, I think are getting activated even more during these very stressful, turbulent times in our world. So where does that take us? We're going to do a series of workshops again. And one workshop, the first workshop, we will be talking about the death process in an erotic space. So we'll actually do some very intimate, as the tantric part, that will actually allow ourselves to have a release, and a physical release. And in that pleasuring moment, kind of coming into what the French word for orgasm actually means mini death. So, when we release, when we ejaculate, when we come to the end of that dynamic arousal that takes us into an ejaculation, that mini death is what we want to kind of capture. So we're going to do ritual where we're actually pleasuring each other or ourselves, and then we're going to actually mummify each other. So we're going to bathe each other. We're going to put strips of cloth over our bodies, anointing one another in kind of a death ritual, and seeing what that brings up for you. So the whole purpose of these workshops is the more we look death in the face as a friend or something to be welcomed rather than something to be feared, the more we're going to be embodied in this time to be of service here on the planet while we're still physically present. So we'll do ritual number one, and ritual number one will be again that kind of mummification. Ritual number two, on another day, we're going to do a ritual mask. And among indigenous peoples and peoples, again, from Egypt all the way through, you can find indigenous people doing mask making to empower themselves to take the journey. So we're going to do an empowering mask for our death journey, and it will be simply doing something like this, and putting pieces of gauze over the face that become constructed into a mask, and men will then, while you're laying there, touch you and pleasure you, so that the mask gets filled with the ecstasy of helping to bridge you from one life to the next, one consciousness to the next. And finally, the third workshop will be our usual ecstatic massage training. And in that ecstatic massage training, we'll be using forms of breath work to take us on the journey while men are touching the whole body, including genitals. But this one is more out of a Taoist thing. So the first one will be more tantric. This last one will be actually about really shedding the skins of going from, as the Celtic gives us an image of life and death and rebirth, so that we're on the table experiencing all of this pleasure to take a journey and wake up to what is it that we experience in that journey, and what do we come back with. So I'll leave you with a couple stories just to juice this up a little bit. So I had a dear friend who lived in Cincinnati, who was a trance medium, and he had a heart attack, and he was dead for a pretty long period of time. And in his near-death experience, he left his body, and he remembered, he could tell the physicians and all the people who were in the room exactly what they were doing, because he could see them. As he pulled his spirit or his energy, his consciousness, pulled up over his body, and of course then he went into what people call the tunnel, or that kind of going through the tunnel, and as he was going through the tunnel, it was kind of like he was having all of these life reviews until he got to the light, or to the end of the tunnel that embraced him. And in that embrace, though, the only thing he heard was, "You are your only judge." And so that was the message he got to take him and bring him back into his body and live then, a number of years longer after this near-death experience, much more empowered, because he had been to the other side. As much as he had kind of been channeling or having intuitive impressions of connecting with the consciousness of those who had died, he now had that for himself. The other story I'll tell you in a near-death experience was another friend who, my hunch was, my friend was at the time probably pretty depressed, and but he was driving, and he had a car accident, and he died in the car accident for, again, a fair amount of time, and in his near-death experience, what message he felt as he went kind of through the tunnel was simply a reminder that he's not alone, and he'll never be alone. So as we embark on this journey of kind of playing with, practicing death and dying, and weaving that into our understanding that it is our erotic energy, the energy that rises up through us, that enlivens us to the passions to be awake and alive and woke in this world, so that we can really offer our greatest services to the world that we live in. I'm reminded of Matthew Simmons, who during the AIDS epidemic and in that period of time, I knew about 300 folks, mostly men, to die. So being with people who are dying is something I'm well acquainted with and have experienced often. And I know that the work of Matthew Simmons during that period in time was that he would actually be a midwife to the dying, and he would actually hold someone or caress someone or help to raise their erotic energy as much as possible, to enliven them, to heal them, to give them a sense of relief, all of those kinds of things. So in these workshops, we're going to be playing with all of those kinds of things of what is the life that can be birthed in us anew and afresh for the times in which we live in, and through the practice of dying and pleasure. So as much as that might be intriguing or you want to know more, check out this page, and if you have questions, we'll happily answer them. Namaste.